We're making history, folks.
I'd rather not.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
I think the Chief's mic might be on, because I think I can hear a conversation he's having not as part of this meeting.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Monday, April 6th Committee of the Whole meeting. This is our first attempt at a virtual meeting, and the process we're going to follow, if it's okay with you folks, is to do a roll call, and then I'll turn it over to staff because this meeting is also being recorded. So I'm Peter McKenna, Councillor Peter McKenna, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. And I'm going to go through the roll call, and when you hear your name, councillors, just please say present. And at the end of that, I'll invite, I'll start with CoW Morris, and Clerk Bennett is also on the line. So, Councillor Alfred.
Present.
Councillor Allen.
Present.
Councillor Brennan.
Present.
Councillor Dwyer.
Present.
Councillor McGuire.
Present.
And we have CoW Morris on the here as well, and Clerk Bennett. And then I'll ask the other staff from Smith Falls who are online to go through, and please state your name.
Councillor McKenna, if we could just stop for 1 second, can you confirm? I know we can all see Mayor Panko, but just confirm his attendance as well.
Oh, I didn't start with Mayor Panko. Thank you.
No, present.
Thank you, Mayor Panko.
Thank you.
So, Director Koziel, are you present?
Yes, Treasurer Koziel's here.
Oh, sorry. And Chief Riseborough?
Present.
Director Dunlop?
Present.
Director Koziel, yeah, Director, who else have we got there?
Director Carrie Costello.
Thank you.
And Senior Planner Gren Key.
Okay.
Hello, present.
Anyone else from the staff that we've missed? Oh, Director Miller or Jennifer Miller?
Jennifer's not attending tonight. She's visual.
Okay. Anyone else from the staff? Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, so to those who are watching on Facebook or other social media, we want to welcome you. Unusual times. We have been granted these new ability to conduct virtual meetings, considering the current pandemic. And so we're going to learn about doing this with you folks. So we appreciate you watching online. Having said that, we have no regrets. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. Any disclosure of monetary interests? Hearing none. We have no delegations. Before we get to the adoption of the minutes, what I'll ask my colleagues on council to do is when you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And if we remember to, at the end of your talk, if you say thank you, then I'll take that as a cue to go to the next person who's raised their hand. If you don't, we'll play it by ear. So number 4 is the adoption of the minutes. We have the March 2nd, 2020 committee meeting of the whole and the March 9th committee meeting of the whole. And I assume we're looking for a motion to approve those minutes. So moved by Councillor Alford, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. Any discussion? Call the motion. All in favor? I'm seeing it's unanimous. I'll just check with the clerk. Do we need to have people verbally say they vote in favor?
No, actually, during our procedures, so we can see all the hands. If there's ever a discrepancy, we'll certainly do a call of who's in favor and who's opposed.
Okay. And what I'll do is, again, because we can't see it as well as we normally do, I'll summarize at the end. So that motion was passed for the adoption of the minutes. We're now going to the item number 5 for those following along, the CAO and directors reports. And I believe that We do have some reports. Are we starting with Director Dunlop, CO Morse?
No, we have two, and I'll start things off and then turn it
Okay.
over to Troy.
Thank you.
So I wanted to bring committee up to current state on the announcement that was made on Friday by the provincial government. Committee will recall approximately 2 weeks ago, the province issued a list of essential services. And by association, if the service wasn't on the list, it was expected it would close down in its present form. There were 74 services on the list.
Check with the clerk. Do we need to have people verbally?
And sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback. So on Friday, the province reduced the list of 44 services. And so I just want to provide a brief explanation of those services and how it impacts the municipality. So regular municipal services were considered essential on the list. Some obvious ones like water treatment and fire protection and police protection, wastewater treatment, those kinds of things were obviously on the list, and the services that support those direct essential services. The things that weren't on the list were the same ones that weren't on the original list of 74. A few examples include the library and childcare services. So really nothing changed based on Friday's announcement as far as the municipality is concerned. Included and probably of interest to many would be the construction projects underway. So the two big ones are the Beckwith project, and it was deemed to fit the criteria of item number 28 on the list of 44. So that project is proceeding. We had discussions with Tomlinson and agreed that it fits the criteria. The other project of note is the Town Hall project. Again, after extensive discussions over the weekend, we determined it fit the criteria. And it's based largely on the fact that our emergency operations center is in Town Hall, as well as our fire dispatch service and the backup for police dispatching. So because of those three elements of activity that occur here, it was determined that it does fit the criteria. So what all this means is that we'll be proceeding with regular municipal services, including those two construction projects. Implicit in that announcement, or in terms of our response to that announcement, we have made alternate work arrangements for staff. I won't go through all the details, but clearly we don't have as many staff working in their offices as we normally do. So each director has identified a way to conduct business without having staff together, and that continues on as we proceed through the pandemic. So perhaps I'll pause there and take any questions.
We have a question from Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm, for that. And I know everyone was wondering about those two significant projects. And as everyone watches the daily press conferences and such, and I watched the one from Premier Ford on Friday with this announcement, and you know, he's pretty implicit about projects that are going forward that are, i.e., housing that is started, that should be finished, and these other projects with infrastructure. But he was implicit about safety measures at the site, and I just want to know, I'm concerned, or I'm sure that they'll be watching to make sure that you know, safe distance is observed and protocol. So we'd like to assure everybody that that's going to happen. I know that Greenbelt and Tomlinson are very responsible contractors. So just to be sure that that's going to be happening, and they'll probably be inspected. I would be certain that they will be inspected while they're working.
Yes, back to CO Morse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Councillor Brennan brings up a really good point, and what I can say in response is that both contractors have developed very explicit protocols for their staff and their subcontractors. We have copies of those protocols, and they were implemented. So And they're drawing on guidance provided by the Canadian Construction Association. So those safeguards are in place, and we're expecting them to be followed.
Yeah, good to hear.
So I'm seeing no further questions on that topic. I think you have another one, CEO Morris.
No, at this point, I'll turn it over to Director Dunlop.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update. Obviously, you've heard the Beckwith Street project is proceeding. We have one construction crew operating at present. Essentially, Tomlinson has scaled down their operations across Eastern Ontario,
application in order to provide the applicants further opportunity to comment in more detail on the points raised. The applicants then decided to revise their application to break the development into two essentially identical buildings, and the concept is preliminary concepts attached to this report. So these buildings would be partially buried and will retain a closer visual profile of a walk-up. So two rental units on each floor. One of those units in each building is proposed to be fully wheelchair accessible. So we did receive a revised application and a planning rationale for those in late January, and we scheduled a second public meeting. We gave full Planning Act notification for that, including those who participated in the earlier process. So this application was well received by the Planning Committee, and we have not heard concerns from the public. So they presented a planning rationale that justified the application, and noting that the low-rise building, the 2.5 stories, is more consistent in the neighborhood. This is a bit of a mixed density neighborhood. There's some single-family homes right around, and then apartments to the rear. The proposed form is better conforming with the prevailing neighborhood character in terms of lot configuration, height, building massing, and setbacks. And in general, I think I agree with the proposed points. The proposal does endeavor to recognize and preserve the existing character of the neighborhood and designed as best as it can into the existing neighborhood pattern. So we acknowledge the work the proponents have undertaken to respond to the concern of the residents and redesign a concept that we feel is better integrated into the neighborhood fabric. So I thank them for doing that. We feel that this is an improvement over what was originally presented, and recommend approval of the application as revised. So I won't get into the various the terms of the special exception zoning. Those are outlined in the report, but I will mention that there is a suggested modification by staff to lock in a maximum height of 8.25 meters, which is roughly what they're proposing, and 2.5 meters lower than the normal height limit in most residential zones. We feel that a reduced height limit is reasonable to manage the overall scale of the development when we're looking at a concept that does introduce some density. And the applicants have agreed to this. So if council approves the zoning, specific details would of course be implemented in a site plan approval, which will come back to council at a later date. Council does not approve the zoning, the property can still be developed in accordance with the current R4-6 zoning. So unfortunately, I also have to note that the provincial state of emergency was also accompanied by the suspension of legislated timelines associated with planning applications, as well as the local planning appeals tribunal going on hiatus. As such, we understand the appeal clocks cannot start, and therefore zoning approvals may not come into full force and effect until after that is lifted. So we're working with our colleagues in other municipalities, and of course our solicitor to ensure that we're adopting a consistent and legal wording on our notices, and how to best manage the holding pattern we're in, and doing our best to ensure that planning business proceeds as best as it can. The situation, as you all understand, is constantly evolving, and I've learned more since even I prepared this report. So that being said, we do encourage council to make decisions on applications, as there is value to the proponents in knowing council's position on the file, and also I think managing our application caseload when business does get back to usual. So with that in mind, I'll pause here and seek council's feedback on the revised application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grinke. I have three councillors that have put up their hand. I'm going to start with Councillor Alford.
Thank you. So yes, will be supporting staff's recommendation. We have seen it at planning, both myself and Councillor Brennan sit on planning advisory, although I don't think you're at the second public meeting, but this proponent came back with something that is certainly more in keeping than the first plan. It addresses some of the strategic issues that we have around housing in Smith Falls. And it also addresses not just to give us some more choices, but also addresses our goal to infill with building as well. So I'm very supportive of staff's recommendation on this. I know that we're a long way from getting there, given the current situation. But when we're ready, I will look forward to seeing that new buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alford. Then I have Councillor McGuire, then Councillor Brennan, and then Mayor Panko. So we'll go back to Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Carl, I was wondering, with all the craziness that's been going on, I was hearing from a few residents on Phillips Street that they still have concerns and they haven't had a chance to be able to get those concerns in writing. I'm wondering, since we have a freeze on residential development at this time, and with all of the zoning changes needing to appeal boards that can't meet so that the timelines wouldn't be able to start as today anyway, if we could defer this a week or two to give those residents a chance to make their concerns known, just out of sympathy for the difficulties that it's been to meet these days. So I guess, Councillor Alford, do you have something to say for that?
No, we'll just stay. So that question is, do you want an answer right now from Mr. Grenke, or do you want to let the conversation continue?
I can certainly, Mr. Chair, that's certainly, I welcome feedback from abutting property owners. This hasn't been presented to me, so certainly I would welcome the opportunity to review any comments that are provided.
Okay, we'll come back to that question. We'll just see if Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, and I was part of the first public meeting. I wasn't at the second one, but the first public meeting, there were concerns that were brought forward by residents, and I think another builder was there and had some comments, and we put it back to the proponent and staff to try to figure it out. And I thought that the resolution was appropriate. The second public meeting was another opportunity for residents to come forward. In the end of the day, this is an opportunity to infill some area. It was a sort of an empty lot there, and I support it. And I'm sure that our planner Grenke is more than amenable to speaking to the residents and working with proponents further. But I think we should put this through, notwithstanding the fact that we're in a construction freeze right now, but we need to do business, and I certainly support it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I look at this as being a great opportunity to intensify the area and do so in a respective manner to the streetscape and the other homes that are in the area. So if we can have 6 units in each lot, we're looking at the height is suitable, the footprint is suitable. Understanding that there has been some public consultation, and if there's a need for further public consultation, of course, this is only one step in the whole process. Construction will not begin anytime soon. Site plan will be an opportunity for the public to weigh in, and if we hear more from the public in the coming weeks, then obviously we can consider that. But I mean, at this stage, this enables staff and the developer to move ahead in incremental steps with the understanding that the zoning is approved. We're not holding the process up, so when operations can begin, construction can begin, at least they're prepared to do that. I mean, it's one step in the right direction and very suitable for the neighborhood, to my beliefs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. I don't have a problem in principle with the zoning that has been presented. I would like to see Carl reach out to those residents who we understand have some concerns and work through site plan to fine tune that. I mean, really, a lot of the concerns that come up in public consultation can usually be alleviated through site plan. Although even at that, when I look at the concept of the site plan that has been presented at this point, I mean, things like buffering and relocating driveway entrances away from adjacent properties have already been considered. So I want to give credit to the developer because it sounds like they did take the time between August and March to go away and really thoughtfully think about the feedback that they heard at the public meeting. That said, certainly if there's a member of the public who doesn't feel like they had opportunity to speak, particularly given the uncertainty of these times, I think it's to our benefit and to the benefit of the community to try and facilitate those conversations to occur before things are final. But I mean, by passing the zoning bylaw at this point, things are certainly not final. There are still further steps that need to be taken. So I'm comfortable at this stage approving what has been presented to us.
Councillor Alford.
Yes, and I agree with what Councillor Dwyer said. In fact, it's a bit of a surprise coming from Councillor McGuire to say that there had been, I think Councillor Brennan and myself and Senior Planner Grenke, if this is the first time we're hearing that someone has concerns, it would be best if people have concerns like that, if they direct them to Senior Planner Grenke so that way they can be handled in site plan. But no one at Planning Advisory Committee heard anything that I know of that there were concerns after we kicked it up to council, and nothing. I've heard nothing since. So that's a bit of a surprise. So I agree with Councillor Dwyer that we can handle probably anything that's coming in site plan.
So I'm hearing support and consensus for moving forward at the next council meeting to approve this zoning recommendation. Any further comments? Thank you, Mr. Grenke. We're moving on to 9B for those following along. And Director Dunlop's going to talk about an award of contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the report before committee tonight is to seek authorization from the mayor and clerk to execute a design build contract with Real Term Energy Corporation. Just a bit of background for everyone's benefit. Staff had brought forward a report to council on October the 28th of last year to discuss the details of a provincial streetlight conversion program that was available. The program was being offered through LAS, or Local Authority Services, and it did a procurement through a competitive process, which resulted in Real Term being the preferred service delivery provider, along with Cree Lighting as the manufacturer of choice for the province. Back at that time last year, council was supportive of moving forward with an investment grade audit. What that audit involved was a detailed review of our streetlight inventory, a check of our energy accounts with Hydro One, and a validation of exactly what our guaranteed energy savings would be should we elect to proceed to what I'll call the next stage of this undertaking. So on November 4th of last year, council did pass a bylaw to enter into that agreement, and staff have been working with Real Term over the winter. The report that I have on the agenda tonight has a table in it that has some critical information for council on what the pre-upgrade and post-upgrade comparisons are for this contract. You'll see in there we've got 1,067 eligible fixtures. These are all what I would call the Cobra head design, 17 of which are actually in municipal parks or municipal facilities. What's very important to get across this evening is this program does not include the ornamental lighting that you would see in Centennial Park as an example. It also does not include sports field lighting or flood lighting. That's not part of the program offering. Some key highlights that you'll see there, 63% reduction in energy and maintenance costs to the tune of $103,262. That is a per year savings. Energy reductions are 367,000 kilowatts per year. Greenhouse gas reductions, 11 tons per year. So a lot of significant environmental benefits of this project. One of the key things, part of the investment grade audit, was to confirm exactly what this conversion would cost. That item is identified at $563,332 plus HST. There is a potential for an added grant through the Save on Energy program. However, it's not administered by Realterm, hence they cannot guarantee that savings. But their forecast is there could be an additional $18,000 in savings. That would be an application we would file after the program is underway. And again, the province or through the IESO would review our eligibility. You're going to see two options in terms of how we deal with this information. We can, of course, advance with the design build contract as presented, or our second option would be to opt out of the contract. So the pros and cons of both of those alternatives are identified in the report. In the latter section, the Treasurer's outlined some financing options for these projects. One, we are looking at essentially a 5-year borrowing term, whether it's internal or external. And Treasurer Koziel is present tonight to speak to any questions around the financing. So a key aspect here to look at is this project has a payback period of just over 5 years, which is pretty significant for, or a very quick payback for an energy project, and hence very attractive to proceed. This project, again, is one of the outcomes of our service sustainability review. We know if we ever want to get our streetlight costs in check with inflation and keep those costs manageable, we do have to move forward with an LED conversion. And as mentioned before, once you come out of year 5, there are significant financial savings in terms of our operating costs and the noted environmental benefits that have been identified in the report, namely lower energy use and greenhouse gas reductions. So I'll finish at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Dunlop. The first question from Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Dunlop, I'm just looking for a piece of clarification. In the budget and financial implications of the report on page 3 of 4, it says if the town should decide not to proceed with the project, it is recommended that the capital costs of just under $600,000 be funded through one of the following options. Is that a typo, or are we not proceeding with one of those options if we do proceed to go forward? Because there wouldn't, to clarify, there wouldn't be a reason to finance if we chose not to proceed, correct?
Through the chair, that would be a typo.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. That's fine then. Me and my financial background, I wasn't sure. That's fine. That's the only point of clarification I had. I have no problem proceeding with the recommendation from staff on this. And I believe I'll be the one motioning to bring this forward at council tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Alford.
Yes, I'm supportive of proceeding with it. I think for all the reasons that have already been stated by Director Dunlop. And I, with regard to the financing of it, option 1 or option 2, from what I can see, option 1 is costs the lease. Is that correct? I'm trying to read it off this very tiny phone.
Yes, that is correct. And as indicated in option 2 with the internal borrowing, we have more flexibility on if the projected cost savings are even higher, then we could in turn pay it off quicker. So definitely option 2 gives you more flexibility.
So yes, I'm in favor of advancing to the next phase, and I'm in favor of the option recommended by staff as well.
And for those who are listening, that was Ms. Koziel speaking. I'll just remind folks to introduce themselves if we don't call out your name. Councillor Brennan, did you want to jump in now? I'm sorry, you look, I might have missed your hand.
Sure, that's fine. Okay. No, I'm certainly supportive of it, and the not using a third party for financing is as was recommended is preferable. The other thing is, and I know Director Manhire's not here, but I know that we have some plans for lighting along Evergreen Avenue and also along in Centennial Park. So, well, I look forward to that too, but this is a no-brainer. So let's go for it and get it done and be paid for in 5 years.
Okay, then I have Councillor Allen and then Mayor Panko.
I just wanted to say I agree with my colleagues. I mean, this is an easy one. We need this. We started it, and we need to finish it. But I also agree with Councillor Brennan. There are other areas of town that we need to look at lighting as well when we get an opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Panko.
Oh, I too support the recommendation. Whether we do a 5-year payback or even we extended it to a longer period and paid it over 10. If we're paying it from our own proceeds, we'd have a net savings, maybe $50,000 a year. But either way, it doesn't really matter much to me. But I agree to use option 2 and utilize their own money, a little bit lower interest, and get it looked after. And it's a good first step. I'm not sure how it fits into our commitment to Partners for Climate Protection under FCM, but we basically through that program committed to taking some baseline measurements of where we are at and committed to making a difference in our community. And this is a great example of reducing greenhouse gases and reducing costs. So well done, Troy.
Thank you.
So unless I see another hand, I think that's a green light for the light proposal that we received tonight. And that will come forward shortly. Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. We're moving on to the 2020 financial report. Ms. Cozio, would you like to say anything before we get into that one?
Mr. If I might, we have item 9C.
Oh, 1 year waste extension. Thank you. Thank you, CEO Morris. We're doing very well tonight. So this is back to Troy. Waste management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report before committee this evening is to review potential 1 year extensions on 3 separate contracts that we hold with Glenview Iron and Metal regarding our waste and recycling programs. Just for a little background, if you go back to February of 2015, that's when the town of Smiths Falls did their last set of tenders for delivery of these services. The contracts, there's 3 of them under 3 separate numbers are listed in the report. One covers curbside waste collection and disposal. One covers our collection of and processing of recyclables, and the third is the collection of the large dumpsters that typically we have at our facilities and our multifamily sites. All 3 of those contracts are set to expire on December 31st of this year. It's important to identify that when the contracts were authored, the town did have a right to extend each or any one of these contracts for a full year without any penalty, essentially an irrevocable option. Over the course of the last 5 years, GIM has provided very reliable and cost-effective services for the community. If you go back to 2015, when they did take over those contracts from the previous service provider, at that point in time, the town saw a $100,000 decrease in the suite of all 3 of these services. So a very significant move toward lower costs. We have 2 options in the report for council to consider. The first one is for staff to move forward with bylaws for extension of the 1 year options in the contracts, and the other would be to proceed with new tenders for initiation of a contract January 1 of 2021. It's staff's recommendation right now that we pursue the 3 1-year renewals. It gives us certainly a significant amount of predictability in our costs. We know our services have been effective and reliable over the last 5 years. We're also aware that there is some uncertainty in the province's rollout of the extended producer responsibilities around the recycling. That is set to start to, I believe the planned transition for that period is 2023 through 2025. And I think having an additional year would give the town further clarity in how we want to transition we'll call our next round of contracts that will see us into that period. So that's our summary for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I think I saw one hand so far, Councillor Alfred. Did you just?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think this is the wisest course of action in the world that we're living in now is, and we don't know how long this is going to last. So I think doing this now and extending it for another year for the reasons that Troy mentioned in terms of the uncertainty of the province with regard to producers. But I do think this is probably the wisest course of action for right now. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm seeing a thumbs up. Director Dunlop, it's Peter McKenna, your chair. I just had one question. In your report, and twice verbally, you referred to the service as reliable. What measures do we use to objectively say that it is a reliable service? I have no doubt it is, but it's more, you're not just saying that because you believe it. There must be, is it the timeliness? Is it the lack of complaints? What do we actually measure that by?
That's a great question, Mr. Chair. We have not yet done a service sustainability review of this area, very much because the recycling industry is being reinvented. Our assessment of the delivery of those services is very much gauged by the number of calls we get from the public and the follow-up that we do. From my experience, having been involved in this for probably over 10 years, the volume of calls we're getting at our organization are quite low for our population. I think that attests to high levels of service. When we do move forward with a sustainability review of this area, we are going to form more firmer metrics around calls per let's say 1,000 persons served, but it's an area we want to move into a higher level of measurement on, but at present, like I said, our call volumes are very low and very manageable.
Thank you. If your experience and it's quite rich says that it's reliable, then I'm on board, and we look forward to giving approval for the direction that's in the report at the council meeting later today. Now we can move on to the 2020 financial report, please, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first report I have is the purpose of this report is to identify the impact of the town's accumulated deficit after reconciling the 2020 tax levy, or also known as the cash basis budget, with the PSAB requirements of accrual accounting. So in my report, there was an appendix that showed provided a summary of the projected impact, and it listed the adjustments that converted our budget from the cash basis to the accrual method. And the estimated decrease to our 2020 accumulated deficit is approximately 2.3 million. That being said, it is important to note that our 2020 capital budget is currently being funded by approximately 4 million in grants. And prudent asset management principles suggest that a minimum annual contributions to our capital program should be equivalent to the historical amortization. Our 2020 transfers from the operational budget to the capital is only, I shouldn't say only, but 2.96 million, whereas our projected amortization for 2020 is 4.4 million. So that's a shortfall of about 1.4. It is staff's recommendation that council adopt this budget to meet the requirements of Ontario Regulation 284 by reconciling the 2020 budget in PSAP compliant format. This report is for information only and adopted along with the 2020 levy-based budget. There is no direct financial impact as revenue and expenditures for 2020 operational and capital budgets are balanced. So if you had any questions?
I'm seeing none. Okay, it sounds like we're going with your recommendation, obviously, and we appreciate the effort in converting this into this different format.
Oh, great.
Oh, Mayor Panko.
Yeah, Janet, can you just for those listening at home, possibly just explain what you mean by deficit and amortization. I mean, understanding that we finished with a cash surplus, but as a result of amortization, we have this deficit. So, in layman's terms, so the average person watching or listening could understand.
So certain things we can exclude from our cash basis budget, like our post-employment benefits, proceeds of debt, and amortization expenses. That also being said, the full accrual would not allow for transfers to and from reserves or acquisition of capital assets and principals paid on debt. So we have to take the things that we have included and the things that we have excluded, and we have to then make it into a PSAP budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, that's just accounting language that no one understands. All we know is we balance our budget every year. Whatever the province wants, they get.
It is important to note that the last time I did a bit of a survey, approximately 60% of the municipalities in our area are still doing cash basis. There are some that have converted to full accrual, but the majority are still doing cash basis.
Okay, I'm seeing no other hands and no other comments. Thank you so much. Don't go too far, which I'm sure you're not. The next item is the the December 2019 monitoring report.
So this report I've held off until after we completed our 2019 year-end audit. Previously, budget monitoring, as you know, was based on projections and assumptions. I'm happy to report upon the completion of our audit that we are in an overall surplus position of about $475,000. Excuse me, I just got a tickle in my throat. So just a bit of a breakdown. The tax supported budget was in a surplus of about $670,000. The water was at a deficit of about $235,000, and the wastewater was in a surplus of about $40,000. Now, as per our reserve policy, any deficit at year end is transferred to or from each of the rate stabilization and capital reserves at a 50-50. So this just basically ensures that any operating surpluses are returned to the taxpayers. The one thing I wanted to denote is the water supported rate stabilization. It had a small balance of only about $69,000, which brought we can't go into a negative balance. So part of that had to be transferred from the tax supported rate stabilization of about $49,000. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention. If you had any questions on and there was a variance report there. If you had any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I can't get it up on my iPad, but I went through the variance report, and there was one number that struck me. It was, I believe, it was about $485,000, and it was something to do with industrial. I can't get it up here right now, but it was. You know which one I mean?
The industrial supplemental?
Yes.
That was our anticipated taxation revenue for Tweed, and that is still ongoing. So we budgeted for that last year, and we budgeted again this year.
Okay. Okay, that explains it. Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, Janet, I just have one quick question, and I just, just trying to make sure I'm thinking the correct way. On the departmental summary, where you're talking about capital operations, it says for 2018 we had a surplus of 74,073. Am I reading that right? This is page 5.
Sorry, what was your question?
Operations? Well, I haven't finished. I was just making sure you're on the right page. But then the next year, 2019, you start by raising the budget amount. But we were already in a surplus. So I'm wondering how you come about, which you do, and how you figure out the numbers as they proceed there. Like, why would it go up if we had a surplus? Maybe I'm misreading that.
Well, our surplus at year end doesn't follow into the next year. They're put into tax or into stabilization and capital reserves. So it doesn't carry over to the next fiscal year, if that's what your question.
No, but does it not speak to need, the amount that we need in that line or not?
Well, each director has to budget accordingly. So there may have been a reason in 2018 that we were lower than, and then in 2020 or 2019, they increased the budget. I'd have to go back through my records for last year. I
okay, no, I was just trying to make sure I understood what was going on. Thanks.
Councillor Alfred.
Yeah, I too looked it over, and if I see that the total variance, this is all departments all in, and we have a surplus at the end of 2019 of almost $218,000. That's reason to congratulate staff on seeing that. Is that correct, Janet? We have a variance to the positive of 217,983.
We have
after all departments.
Overall surplus of 475,000.
Right.
There's a surplus for tax support of about 670. The only department or the only budget that was in a deficit was the water.
Okay, so that's I commend our staff and our treasurer for performance. Like, I would be happy in the corporate world to have seen that year-end statement.
Thank you, Mayor Panko.
Yeah, very positive. I think, and great work by Janet and I think all departments. When you look at coming up with a sizable surplus, factoring in the supplementals for canopy growth have yet to roll out completely. So there's and that story will continue, and we'll see some results there eventually. But also recognizing shared services. So the services we get through the county for Lanark Lodge and social housing, Ontario Works, and those expenses, which come in probably close to 200,000 more net than what we had budgeted for. So despite all these factors, we still end up with a good surplus. So I think great work by staff to manage budget very effectively.
CEO Morris.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going back to Councillor Allen's question, I don't have the document in front of me, but we'll go back and have a look at that particular line item. I understand the question that we had a surplus in 2018, so why did the budget increase in 2018?
Yeah, I guess I took accounting in high school. I'm married to an accountant, but as I was looking over it, I just was trying to figure out, normally, if you're having a surplus in something, then you kind of adjust it so you don't think you have the same need. But I don't fully understand what those needs are, so it could be that they just had things they knew they were going to have to do that year.
Yes, so it was based on some operational need or change in service. So we'll go back and have a look at that and advise committee of the reason for the adjustment.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just make a comment, if I may, your chair here, Peter. CEO Morris has mentioned that he and his senior staff will be looking, as a result of the implications of what we're going through right now and what we're likely to be going through for the next few months. So this budget monitoring that we've done and looking back at last year might look pretty good compared to where we'll be next year. Let's hope not, but I think we've got an unusual, unprecedented time ahead of us for managing our budgets, and we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. And I know Janet and CEO Morris are going to do their best, and the other senior staff, to take a look at what the implications of all of this are about. So we stay tuned for that, and I appreciate the work, Janet. So that was an information item, and we appreciate receiving that information. The next item is the exception to the animal control bylaw, and Carrie, I think you're on for that.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've had a request for an exemption to the animal control bylaw. It would be to allow the keeping of a maximum of 6 ducks and 2 peacocks at the property of 115 Lawrence Street. I'm sure council's aware of that area. So that area is zoned residential, light agricultural. It's an R1 special exception zone. So they're requesting exception to the animal control bylaw to increase the number of animals, as well as to allow the ducks and the ducks and the peacocks on the property. One thing I will point out in my report, which is a bit of a change, it came to light late Friday. It's the current owners are seeking the exception on behalf of potential buyers of the property. So that's where the exception to the animal control bylaw comes in. Staff are receptive to the request, given the location of the property. There would be a couple caveats to the approval. One being that the number of animals on the property does not increase. The second would be that due to the area that it's being approved for, should that area become populated or developed, that the approval would be rescinded. And of course, all other provisions of the animal control bylaw, which includes the enclosure and screening, would also be applicable to this exemption. And one thing that I will note, and I thank Councillor Dwyer for asking me this question via email, I was in contact with the neighboring property to make sure to see if they were okay with the exception, which they are, as long as all the requirements of the animal control bylaw, specifically regarding the enclosure and screening, are adhered to.
Okay, thank you. I do have several people want to jump in on this. I've got Mayor Panko starting us off.
Thanks, Kerry. And I mean, most people in our community probably aren't even aware this area of town is part of our town, probably the most rural and remote part of our community. And understanding there's no concern from the neighbor next door, understanding no other neighbors who could be impacted by it, and the fact that we can build parameters around this that would ensure that if development changes in that area, then this could be lifted and removed. So, and we're not looking at dozens of birds, and I think it's with 8 and 2 species primarily. It seems very manageable. So I support the staff recommendation.
Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I agree. But I'm just thinking we're not setting any precedent, because I know we've talked about, I'm not sure if it was this council or the one before, but we talked about chickens.
Yes,
and so this would be a one-off in my view. I'm not sure. Yeah, I've never heard of domestic ducks other what the purpose is, but it is rural, in fact. But I know on the planning committee, we've talked about that area of town, and it's going to be subject to development in the future. So I'm fine with this as long as we don't get other requests and we don't set a precedent with it.
Thank you. I've got
be daffy about it.
No, of course not. I have Councillor Dwyer and then Councillor Alfred.
Thank you. Yeah, the only concern I had was with the impact to immediately adjacent property owners. I mean, peacocks are loud creatures. They're beautiful, but they're loud. And I mean, their midnight call can go as far as 5 kilometers from what I've read. So so long as the immediately adjacent property owners have been consulted with, which Director Costello has conceded that they have been, then I don't have any objection. Power to you. Hopefully they don't get out. That's my only worry, because they're a nightmare to catch. But that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Alfred.
Yes, and I will support staff's recommendation, and it makes it easier that it is light agricultural in a rural area. But my concern was similar to Councillor Dwyer's, because I used to live less than a kilometer from 2 peacocks, and it's awful. The sound is awful, and so as long as it sounds like people screaming, particularly small children, but. If Director Costello has checked with the budding property owners and they're okay with it, then I am as well.
Okay, I actually like the sound of children screaming, so but I'm unusual.
Maybe not at midnight, Peter.
Sure, that's a good point. I don't think we have anything else on the agenda. I want to tell you what a great job everyone did. Yes, Councillor Alford.
Just one other thing on the exception to the animal control bylaw. The 13.2 because I was reading the bylaw itself. Yes. 13.2. I did have to stop and think about this really far longer than I probably should have. But in 13.2, it references Indigenous non-venomous snacks. And I had to really think about the snacks that would be Indigenous and non-poisonous before I put it all together in my head that snacks probably is snakes.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Wow. So as I was saying, I want to thank you all for our first meeting on Zoom, and I really appreciate it. We do look forward to feedback from those watching on Facebook of how we could improve this. So please get in touch with our staff and let us know, or us directly, what we could do differently or better. I did do an informal poll as I was watching you all, how many times we touched our face. I probably did it the most. Councillor Dwyer is right up there. Councillor Brennan, the rest of you have been really good. So there's been 3 here that we're going to keep working on it.
It's better than picking your nose.
My husband recommended that I get a cone, like a dog, because that may actually be the only way I stop touching my face.
I'll drop one off.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan.
This might be used.
So we're going to motion to adjourn. Now, for those of you who are watching, please stay tuned. We're going to go right into the council meeting. So a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Brennan, sent by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So don't go away.
So are we taking any break, or we're going right into it?
My suggestion would we just keep continuing. You have your motions ready, so we should be good to go.
Well, I still have the gavel here. I'm in the council chambers. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of Smith Falls Town Council. So for Monday, April 6th. I have one announcement this evening, and it relates to the outcome of our most recent emergency control group meeting, which was held this morning. And Smith Falls will be declaring a state of emergency from this point forward. So I'll read the declaration. I, Sean Panko, Mayor, hereby declare an emergency in accordance with the Emergency Management Act 2003 due to the emergency described as COVID-19 pandemic, as previously declared by the province on March 17th, 2020. And this will extend, of course, for the entire town of Smith Falls. A press release will be going out shortly. I will take a moment to read the press release and give the community some understanding as to why we reached this decision at this point. So the town of Smith Falls declares a state of emergency in response to COVID-19. Smith Falls Mayor Sean Panko today declared a state of emergency in Smith Falls to help support public health officials' efforts to flatten the curve and to contain the spread of COVID-19. This aligns with steps already taken by the Government of Ontario, as I mentioned earlier on March 17th. With the number of cases of COVID-19 in our region continuing to rise, we are at a critical point to reduce community spread of the virus, said Sean Panko, Mayor of Smith Falls. Declaring a state of emergency is necessary to emphasize the seriousness of the situation. It's critical that people in Smith Falls do everything in their power to reduce the risk of this virus spreading any further. Be rigid in your hand washing practices and adherence to physical distancing protocols. Stay home as much as possible. You should only be going out in public if you are an essential worker, to pick up groceries once a week, to attend medical appointments, or pick up medications. Everyone plays a critical role, and now is the time to act. The town's emergency control group had previously discussed the possibility of an emergency declaration numerous times in the past several weeks. The announcement from the health unit on the weekend of an outbreak at 2 local retirement homes and a continuing concern that some of our citizens are still not taking proper precautions were factors in making today's declaration. This declaration will also enable the town to initiate and support efforts locally to help ensure our seniors, people living with compromised immunity, and others at elevated risks are able to self-isolate, knowing community supports will be in place to deliver groceries and prescriptions to them. More details on that will be coming in the near future. Under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, the head of council may declare that an emergency exists in the municipality and may take such action as necessary to implement the emergency plan of the municipality and to protect property and health, safety, and welfare of residents. The state of emergency will remain in place until further notice. The town has been proactive in its response to COVID-19. Although municipal offices and recreation equipment are closed to the public, essential services such as garbage and recycling continue to be provided. Bylaw officers are also assisting the Smiths Falls Police Service in patrolling the downtown area, all parts, as well as residential areas, to educate the public and ensure compliance with the new provincial orders. In addition, the Thurber Street location of the Child Development Center has now reopened today for children of essential and critical workers. Construction projects on Beckwith Street and at Town Hall are also continuing as per guidance from the province. For health information, please contact the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit at 1-800-660-5853 or visit the website at healthunit.org/coronavirus. For additional information on the town's response, please visit the town's COVID-19 page on our homepage. And for further information, you may contact me at Town Hall 613-283-4124, extension 1110, or mayor@smithsfalls.ca. As mentioned, it's not a move that didn't come without incredible forethought and consideration. I think it was 9 times we've discussed at our emergency control group meetings. And the decision was made at this point, this juncture, that we need to take further action to ensure the safety of our residents and do what we can to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in our community. Moving back to our agenda. I will ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I hear none. We have no delegations. We do have adoption of minutes, which is with Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire, February 18th, 2020, March 2nd, 2020, and March 16th, 2020 council meetings, that the minutes of the February 18th, 2020, March 2nd, 2020, and March 16th, 2020 meetings of council be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor
McGuire.
The February 18th, 2020, March 2nd, 2020, March 16th, 2020 council meetings, council minutes be approved as circulated. As all in favor? That is carried.
Your worship?
Yes.
Just
yes.
A point of order. I'm just asking Clerk Bennett, should we have done a roll call again at the beginning of this meeting and or was it just for the committee of the whole?
We could certainly could have did one, but we rolled right into this one. And
okay.
But in the future, certainly at a council meeting that would be by itself, we would do a roll call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports. I'll just go by show of hand. Anybody have a report? Councillor Dwyer?
Thanks. I have a couple. It's been a while since I gave a report, but there are a couple things that I wanted to touch on. The first is an update on Real. So the Real has closed their commercial operation, the Real Deal store, in response to the pandemic. The reason I raise it is because I know that there have been concerns about people spring cleaning now that we have lots of time on our hands and trying to figure out what to do with the products that they no longer want. Please be very, very mindful of signs posted about dumping and leaving products. This isn't just a problem at Real. Certainly, there are other points in town where this has been an issue. So please just be mindful of the fact that most organizations right now are not taking donations. So if you could either hold those until such time as they are being donated, or find another way to donate them or reuse them, that would be advisable. Just on the note of the food bank, I know Councillor Alfred raised it in my absence a couple of weeks ago, but certainly any opportunity members of the public have to donate either money, preferably money at this point, or food goods would be appreciated by the health or the food bank rather. Certainly not everybody has the resources available right now to donate. So those that do, if they could be mindful of that and donate where they can, it would be appreciated. Finally, I know Mayor Pankow touched on this very briefly, but the daycare has reopened. And as of today, there are still spaces available. Certainly, this is not the first location that parents want to send their children, but in some cases, this is their only option. So where you are an emergency service provider or a provider of an essential business as identified on the province's list of essential businesses, opportunities do exist for you to have emergency childcare provided free. And that's in partnership between the town of Smiths Falls, the town of Perth, which also has spaces available, and the county of Lanark. And we really, really thank our partners at Lanark County for providing that. So effective today, I understand that there are still spaces available if parents find themselves in a position where they have no other choice and they do need childcare. They should contact either an email address at ss, as in Shannon at lanarkcounty.ca, or alternatively, you can call the county directly at 613-267-4200 extension 2304 to get more information about your availability for service. The last point I wanted to raise is that in doing some research on essential services, I did take it upon myself to reach out to the province and confirm that there was one further essential service that they forgot to add to the list, and that is the delivery of Easter eggs to interested children this coming weekend. The Easter Bunny, to be clear, is still very much an essential service, and he will still be making rounds this coming weekend. So just in case there was any doubt, maybe the press, if they're listening, could help us get that message out. The Easter Bunny is still certainly on his way. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And just more on the daycare, this was the directive of the province, which enabled the town and the county and the town first to move ahead. And there were very strong and stringent screening methods, protocols in place before any child is permitted to enter the facility. So for those who are wondering, yes, there's been very strong procedures in place to ensure safety for not just our staff, but also for the young people who will be resident there for temporary periods of time during the day. Any other reports? Yes, Councillor Alfred.
Not a report, to your worship, but just to follow up on Councillor Dwyer's report with regard to the food bank. We're very, if anybody has been watching and listening, there's a fair bit of money flowing. It's going to dribble down, flowing towards all food banks, including, I'm sure, our Smiths Falls one. There is another place if people are considering donating, and that is to the faith-based group that are right now managing 6 days a week for bag lunches. And so if somebody wants to donate to something, that's an area that I think Reverend Christopher Ryan at Trinity United is probably one of the ones that you can get in touch with. That is not going to be funded by any federal or provincial monies, as the food banks will be. So I encourage people to think about them as well. Thank you.
Yes. Who else has got a hand up? Oh, Peter?
Thank you, Your Worship. But as the Health Unit Board member, I just want to take this opportunity in particular to thank Dr. Paula Stewart, our Medical Officer of Health, for her efforts, her staff efforts, and all of the municipal partners across Lanark, Leeds, Grenville. They're working 24/7, doing their best to keep us safe. And Dr. Stewart and her team have just done an exceptional job. And Dr. Barry Guppy at the Smiths Falls Hospital as well, and his team are doing a remarkable job, as are all the healthcare and essential service providers. I did wonder, and this is kind of maybe inappropriate to do it this way, but I did wonder if we could erect a small sign at the corner of Cornelia and Elmsley, or a large sign, thanking truckers, essential workers, healthcare providers, and first responders from the good folk of Smiths Falls. It's a very busy intersection. It would be a small gesture. Again, if there was some way that staff could consider that and the implications of doing something like that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, I'm sure that's something staff could work on. Now, any other hands up? I keep have to go across my screen here to see, because you're not all on there at one time. Nope. Oh, Councillor Alford, sorry.
Well, I know we've said it, I've seen it in social media, and Councillor McKenna has just mentioned it again, but as long as we're giving shout outs to people, honestly, the grocery store workers need a standing ovation for ensuring, and the owners of those stores are really responsible for keeping not just Smiths Falls fed. There are 5 townships on our borders that are also shopping there. So I really, and I know we all do, appreciate the owners that are doing everything they can to keep us safe and to keep their staff safe and to keep us all fed. So I know that all my colleagues would join me in acknowledging and thanking, because without food we get cranky.
Thank you. Anything else? Again, I'll just reinforce the message that we continue to express, as well as every level of government and health official, practice social distancing, physical distancing, and stay off the play structures and stay away from the playgrounds and the basketball courts. And it may seem like, well, what am I doing? I'm just going to play with my child. We all know that if you could be a potential carrier of COVID-19, not realize it, and it can transmit very easily from your hands onto a hard object and pass on to the next person who's there. And the same thing goes for grocery stores. Give people space, please. Be respectful of those young people and anybody who's working in a grocery store or any store. Times are stressful, times are difficult. And all too often there have been outbursts of anger and frustration from people, and maybe that's not normal behavior from these people during normal times, but these are not normal times. So please act with kindness and compassion, and understand that the people who are there doing their job are doing so in some difficult situations. So please approach with kindness and patience. Any other reports or comments? So we'll move into our bylaws. Our first bylaw, I'm sorry, I don't have a list of who's got the bylaws, so I will just let whoever up first, let me know.
Your Worship, Councillor McGuire, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls at its meeting held on the 2nd, 16th, and 23rd days of March 2020, received and read, taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. The bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls at its meetings held on the 2nd, 16th, and 23rd days of March 2020. Be read, signed, sealed, and numbered. 101133. All in favor? Show of hands, please. Any discussion, Councillor McGuire?
This is a standard bylaw we pass every month to confirm the proceedings of council, so this will get the month taken care of.
Thank you. Can I have a third reading, please?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls at its meeting held on the 2nd, 16th, and 23rd days of March 2020 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10133-2019.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, 2020. Moved by Councillor McGuire, second by Councillor Dwyer. Bylaw 101123, bylaw 2020. The bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls at its meetings held on the 2nd, 16th, and 23rd days of March 2020 be read, signed, sealed, and numbered 10133-2020. All in favor? Let's see. Hands. Any opposed? Nope. That's carried. On to item 7.2, which is
Yes,
with
Your Worship. This
Councillor
is,
Alford.
yes, this is moved by
I got that.
myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to lift part lot control respecting the lands described as blocks 7, 8, and 9 of registered plan 27M-83, bylaw 10134-2020. It'll be read as first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Dwyer. Sorry, get my glasses on this. Bylaw to lift part lot control respecting the lands described as blocks 7, 8, and 9 on registered plan 27M-83. First and second reading, the bylaw to lift part lot control respecting the lands described as blocks 7, 8, and 9 of registered plan 27M-83 be received and read a first time and as taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Alford.
Yes, Your Worship, I believe we discussed this at our last committee of the whole meeting. This is for the townhouses in the Bellamy Farms division. We had already previously, some months ago, allowed a smaller lot for the center unit of these townhouses. It went through planning advisory, went to council. And so we have already, they want to broaden that now to include their other townhouses in the other blocks. And so that's what this is for.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I don't see any. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Dwyer. Third reading, the bylaw to lift plot control respecting the lands described as blocks 7, 8, and 9 of registered plan 27M-83. Okay, now with the third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10134-2020. All in favor? Opposed? None. That is carried. Councillor Dwyer, you have the next bylaw.
Thank you. This bylaw pertains to the award of contract for LED street light conversion program, bylaw 10135-2020, that a bylaw be authorized to for the execution of a design build contract with Real Term Energy Corporation respecting the LED street light conversion program be received and read a first time and taken and read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Brennan.
Brennan, thank you.
My apologies.
That award of contract LED streetlight conversion program, that a bylaw to authorize execution of a design build contract with Real Term Energy Corporation respecting the LED streetlight conversion program be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. So this conversion program will see the conversion of 1,067 street lights. That does not involve any lights that are not associated with street lighting, on-street lighting, to LED lights, which will reduce the operating cost by 63%, allowing for a 5-year payback to the municipality. The total cost of the project is $563,000, $332. I believe the direction coming out of Committee of the Whole was to move forward with internal borrowing opposed to outside financing, which provided us with more control over the loan and also kept the costs for that loan down.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Third reading, please.
Thank you. With Real Term Energy Corporation respecting the LED streetlight conversion program be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10135-2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor Brennan, that bylaw to authorize execution of design build contract with Real Term Energy Corporation respecting the LED streetlight conversion program be now with a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10135-2020. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And Councillor Alford, you have item 7.4.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94, respecting the property municipally known as 8-10 Phillip Street, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna. bylaw 8 to 10 Phillip Street zoning bylaw 10136-2020. That a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94, respecting the property municipally known as 8 to 10 Phillip Street, be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Alford.
Yes, Your Worship, this clears the way for 2 6-unit apartment buildings on Phillip Street. It's in keeping with the town's wishes to build fill in where we can, and this was a double lot. And as well, there will be one in each, I believe, that will be also wheelchair accessible apartments. And so this is quite in keeping with our strategic plan and our hopes for getting more housing and more housing opportunities.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I don't see anybody's hands up. Can I have a third reading, please?
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 6080-94, respecting the property municipally known as 8 to 10 Phillip Street, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10136-2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, seconded by Councillor McKenna. Third reading, the bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 6080-94, respecting the property municipally known as 8 to 10 Phillip Street, be now with a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10136-2020. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And Councillor McKenna, you're up next.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I have no. I didn't have any. I don't have the wording of that bylaw.
Oh, and okay. Councillor Dwyer, you have 7.5.
No,
it is assigned to Peter, but I have it in front of me if needed.
Yeah, I don't have that. I never got that.
I have it too.
Okay.
I can second
please.
it.
Okay, so Councillor Dwyer, please proceed with the moving the motion, and Councillor Brennan, you can second it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the waste and recycling contract with Glenview Iron and Metal be received and read a first time and taken and read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan. 1-year extension waste and recycling contracts. The bylaw to authorize an amendment to the waste and recycling contracts with Glenview Iron and Metal be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Discussion, Councillor Dwyer.
Our service contract for waste and recycling collection is currently held by Glenview Iron and Metal. The recommendation of our Director of Public Works is that we extend that by 1 year.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the third reading, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the waste and recycling contract with Glenview Iron and Metal be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10137-2020.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan, that a bylaw to authorize an amendment to the waste and recycling contracts with Glenview Iron and Metal be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10137-2020. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Brennan, you're up next.
I am. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10108-2020, being a bylaw to adopt estimates of the sums required for municipal purposes for the year 2020 to include 2020 PSAB basis budget, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10108-2020, being a bylaw to adopt estimates of the sums required for municipal purposes for the year 2020 to include the 2020 PSAB basis budget, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah. Treasurer Koziel explained this to us in very complicated language in our previous meeting, but the short and long of it is there's requirements provincially to use accrual accounting, report in accrual accounting, not in budget process, but at some point, accounting for non-financial assets and liabilities. It's a snapshot that shows us our depreciation of assets and that sort of thing. It's not a reflection of our statement, which we heard later was we're in a surplus, but this is a provincial requirement, and this is what this is. So,
thank you. Any further discussion? Can I have a third reading, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10108/2020 being a bylaw to adopt estimates of the sums required for municipal purposes for the year 2020 to include the 2020 PSAB basis budget be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10138/2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 10108/2020 being a bylaw to adopt estimates of the sums required for municipal purposes for the year 2020 to include the 2020 PSAB basis budget being now with a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10138/2020. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And Councillor Alford, you have the final bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to authorize an exemption to animal control bylaw 8856-2016, respecting the property known as 115 Lawrence Street, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Allen, a bylaw to authorize an exemption to animal control bylaw 8856-2016, respecting the property known as 115 Lawrence Street, be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Alford?
Yes, Your Worship. This exemption it will allow for 6 ducks and 2 peacocks to take up residence at 115 Lorne, which is probably the most rural part of Smiths Falls within our boundaries. And so we're going to make way for those animals. I just want to note that this exemption, should that property begin or that section of town begin to be developed, this exemption could be withdrawn at that time. But until then, the ducks and the peacocks have a place to go.
Any further discussion? Third reading, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen, that a bylaw to authorize an exemption to animal control bylaw 8856-2016, respecting the property known as 115 Lawrence Street, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10139-2020.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Allen, the bylaw to authorize an exemption to the animal control bylaw 8856-2016, respecting the property known as 115 Lawrence Street, be now with a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10139-2020. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. That's it for our bylaws. We have no miscellaneous motions. Any inquiries or announcements? Yes, Councillor McKenna.
I wanted to clarify, Clerk Bennett did indeed send me that document. I failed to open such a document, so I own that one and I apologize for that. And secondly, Mayor, could you just talk about the impact of the role of council during a state of emergency, which you've just declared going forward?
Well, really, I think for all sense and purposes, there's really no change in operations. If there's a need be from a purchasing standpoint and in a crisis critical situation, the CAL will be empowered to make some purchases over and above our current procurement bylaw. Other than that, there's no other, let's say, individual powers which are granted through this process. And Chief Bro, you're on the line, or CM Morris, if you feel free to chime in. I think at this stage, it certainly enables us to send a stronger message. And I also think when we're looking at the crisis we are facing today and how this will evolve in the near future, unfortunately, I think it enables us to empower volunteers in our community to assist other residents in our community and ensure we have proper procedures and safety measures in place. But Chief Cheeseborough, would you like to add some comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. One of the things it does ensure is if we get to the point where we are soliciting for volunteers, we can be assured that they are now covered under the WSIB in the event one of them is injured or gets ill as a result of this situation. It also brings some structure to our municipal control group with defined roles and responsibilities. And it gives us leverage to deal with the province should any new programs or additional funding be made available. At this point in time, there is none, but certainly we are in line should that become available. We do report on a daily basis and deal with the province on a daily basis. We receive updates, and working with the municipal control group, we've got a tremendous amount of skill and knowledge there that's positioned the town very well at this point.
Thank you. Any further comments? CEO Morris, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think you both covered it well. I would just comment that under the Act, it enables the head of council to take action, make decisions related to the emergency. So in terms of council's role as a policy-making body, it really doesn't change. So if you take this evening's committee and council agendas, nothing would change. These things would still come forward to council. In the event council was unable to meet, the mayor would be empowered to make decisions. But certainly, I don't think this council will see a change to day-to-day planning matters. Contractual matters will still come before council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Alford?
Just to say now that that Smith Falls 2 has joined many of our other sister municipalities in declaring an emergency. I'm very grateful for the counselors that I work with and for our staff. They have guided us so far in all the ways we needed to be guided. And the mayor in his different role, should something happen where he had to act alone, he would have my full support.
Councillor Brandon, you had something you want to say as well?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I think that the declaration of a state is the right move. I think that, as someone who's come out of a 14-day quarantine a few days ago, and actually drove through the east coast of the United States on the way up here, we are handling this much better. And there's a lot of awareness. When I left, the beaches were full, the restaurants were full. I didn't attend them, but I think that, the declaration of the state is an underlying, it's a wake-up call to people. I've been out once since we were out of quarantine. I went out once to the grocery store. The grocery store is being handled very, very well, and I applaud that declaration. But the reason I put my hand up in the first place was to congratulate and thank staff for all you're doing. And I know that these are not easy times for you guys with families and that sort of thing. But I'm really impressed with this meeting, and I knew we could do it. And thank you to Deputy Clerk Bennett and Clerk Costello and CEO Morris and everyone in the town hall for doing what you do. And you are essential, and we're there for you, and we applaud you. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. I think you spoke on behalf of all of us for that statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion of adjournment, which is with Councillor Allen, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that this council adjourn its proceedings and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council at 6:38. Is that right? Close enough.
At 6:40. I have 6:44.
6:44. Okay.
Is moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor, sorry, McGuire. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:44 p.m. and stands so adjourned to the next duly called meeting of council. Thanks everyone for your participation. And again, thanks to staff for making sure things move relatively smoothly. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Turn this thing off.